Welcome back to All Things Lord of the Rings with your host Alex, also known as Solinus Dracone. No retractions or corrections this week, folks. Right back on with the story. So, last week we talked about how the Noldor, for the most part, left Aman. They journeyed across the sea, received the doom of Mandos, and half were betrayed by the other half. Fëanor had died to the whip of Gothmog, and some pretty grim shit went down. I never pointed this out before, but it's a cool thing, so I'll mention it. The Valar all had a throne room of sorts. It was called the Ring of Doom, and was pretty much the official spot that the Valar sat and did their hashing out of things. I want to make it very clear that in the context of the Tolkien universe, and indeed in the context of the original meaning of the word, Doom did not mean what we feel it means today. Doom, as we commonly use it, means someone's death or imprisonment. It carries with it an overwhelmingly negative connotation. The original meaning of the word doom was someone's fate, what was fated to occur. This could very well be death or imprisonment or any number of horrible, bad things, but it could also mean something good, like being fated to be a great warrior or a king or something else. It simply means someone's destiny, usually as the result of a judgment. The Ring of Doom was a place where fate and destiny were decided. Back in Valinor, while Fëanor and them were sailing out, the Valar were not idle, as Fëanor had accused them of being. What he didn't comprehend at the time, or perhaps knew but didn't care about, was that the Valar don't need to be talking in order to be doing something. They can communicate with each other through their minds. I'm actually positive the elves knew about this, because at least in some cases, they had that capability as well. But that's kind of irrelevant for the moment. I said that the Valar were not idle, and in this case, I meant that they were busy doing something. Even as Fëanor and the Noldor left Aman, the Valar were trying their hardest to undo what Morgoth and Ungoliant had done. Nienna's tears, however much they had the power to heal, had no effects upon the trees, other than the original cleansing of the poison. Yavanna herself tried her best to feed some more life into the trees, but it was beyond anyone's power to bring Laurelin and Telperion back to life. Just when everybody was about to give up hope, something amazing happened. On Telperion, a single flower bloomed, and on Laurelin, a golden fruit. Now, technically it was at this very moment that the trees truly died. Up until then, they had only been mostly dead. Anyways, the fruit and the flower were the true final remnants of the two great trees who had bathed Aman in their holy light. Right away, they were given to Aule to be put in containers to preserve them, and they were blessed by Manwë. They were then given to Varda to become lamps in the sky, outshining the stars to bring light to all of Arda, because it was high time that the whole world, and not just the western half, was covered in light. Mostly because it would hinder Melkor, but also because they believed that the entire planet deserved to be given such radiance. This fruit and this flower, as you may have guessed, were to become the sun and the moon. Names were given to them. Isil the Sheen, the flower was called, and Anar the Fire Golden was the fruit. I'll let you figure out which one was the sun and which one was the moon. They were also called Rana the Wayward and Vasa the Heart of Fire, but that's a bit more naming than is wise to go into at this point. The Valar chose two Maiar to carry these lights. Arion carried the sun. Up until that point, she had been a flower tender in the gardens of Vana. Tilion carried the moon. Before this, he was a hunter in the company of Orome. Now, Arion was a spirit of fire who had not been swayed by Melkor, and she was the mightier of the two. It is written that her eyes were too bright even for the Eldar to look upon. The moon rose first in the sky, just as Fingolfin began his march into Middle-earth. After Tilion made several circuits of the world, Arion rose with the sun. As the new golden fiery ball of light came up into the sky, Morgoth huddled into the deepest halls of Angband and sent forth a great cloud of fog and gloom to cover his fortress and the lands around it from the terrible light. Now this gets a little complicated for a moment. Arion kept a fairly straight arrow path, but Tilion was a bit more unfocused. See, Tilion apparently was sweet on Arion and was always trying to get up near to her. This was inconvenient to say the least, because it meant that firstly, the world wouldn't be evenly bathed in light, and secondly, the moon would be overshadowed. Plus, Tilion actually got scorched by being so close. Partly because of Tilion's waywardness, and partly because the sun kind of hid all the other stars that she had put there to be marveled at in the first place, Varda changed her plans up slightly, and made it so that the sun and the moon were not both in the sky together constantly, so that there could be a period of rest and darkness which was at least partly illuminated by the moon. The other reason was that Este and Lorien asked for this, so there's that. Also, the first pass of the sun was from west to east, but after that, the sun began to move from east to west, going underneath Arda to come out on the other side each day, because remember, Arda is flat at this point. Tilion never got his shit together, but for the most part he was visible during the night, and so Arda got to have some light at night sometimes. Morgoth actually made a try at attacking the moon, but that shit failed. By this point, he had lost way too much of his power to his own machinations to take on a power like Tilion or Arion. After that, he pretty much stayed put deep under Angband and didn't really have the stones to personally come up outside after that. Now is the time to mention something that has been rather long overdue. Years by the trees were reckoned differently from the years by the sun and the moon. According to an entry upon the Tolkien Gateway, 1 year of the trees was nearly 10 years of the sun and the moon. This puts a different sort of a scale on things that happened before the moon and the sun rose. While they are indeed still just called years, this meant that the elves had still been around roughly 10 times as long as we would think they had been around. It's incredibly complicated to figure the numbers out, and I just bet my bollocks that someone is going to rip into me over the math. But I am once again going to point out that I am just trying to give perspective. I am not trying to be the singular source of information. You want the exquisite details, go read the books. Years of the trees were way longer than years of the sun and the moon. Deal with it. Also, after they set forth the sun and the moon, the Valar decided it was time to tighten up their defenses, and so they hiked up the mountains of the Pelori, which was the mountain range that surrounded Aman, and they put a misty, shadowy veil of mystery around some islands off the coast, which they also made for this purpose, so that no one could come unbidden into Aman. Anyone who tried to sail west to Aman again would have a really hard time making it through this mist and not hitting any of the islands. One other very interesting and important thing happened, by the way, as the sun rose for the first time. The second children of Iluvatar, humans, came into the world. And that's all for today. I want to thank you all very much for watching. I am Alex, also known as Solanus Dracone, and this has been All Things Lord of the Rings. Goodbye.